low, like higher, because what I've kept in my mind is 45. So the user is saying 35. So I have to tell him that he is supposed to guess something higher. Let's say he is going to say 55 now. Now, again, I'll say the number is not correct. The number is not correct. Get something lower. So by this time, he should know the number which I'm guessing is somewhere between 35 and 55. So now he can take a wild guess and say 45. Now I'll say the number is correct. Congratulations. Okay, number is correct. And I'll say congratulations. It's a simple, fun game, a very simple, fun game, which we can design using Python. So I'm just trying to take this example, which is because it is something which we can all of us can connect without much technical details, right? So I'm just trying to take this. Now, if you have something like this, how do we go ahead and resolve this resolve this problem? Okay, so let me put this in comments so that it will be useful for future reference. Okay, so let me put this in comment. Okay, now after this is done, now let me start writing the code for this. Let me start writing the code for this. So how do I begin writing the code? First rule of writing any program is having or understanding what the inputs are. Then we should know what to process and how to produce the output. I'm just trying to show you live coding because I'm not taking any example which has already been written, and I'm trying to show you how to code these kind of things so that you get a understanding of how Python can be very powerful in solving problems like this. Again, I picked up this problem because it doesn't have any sort of technical difficulty, and all of us can connect to this particular situation. I expect you not to really understand any of the Python constructs here. I just want you to see the process and really get an experience of how Python coding can be really good for solving problems like this. Now, so we all understand this is a game. So we need to produce some sort of indication for our users. Okay, so I'll say print something like this. I'll say like this. So I'll show you what exactly it does. Print gets my number game. So this is a guess my number game. So we have this, and we do something like this. Okay. So let's see what happens when I run this. Okay, so let me keep this in. Let me keep it somewhere. So first, let me keep it somewhere. Guess my number .py. Okay. So and let me run this. You'll see what happens here. So basically, it gives you some banner like this, so that we can give a good start. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to tell the users that how to tell the users how to play the game, right? So how to play the game. So in this game, the computer number, okay, pick the number. Print. You need to guess it. So this is basically what the game is all about. Okay, so this is what it is. Now the input. Now the input is basically nothing. So we have to pick up the computer. We have to make the computer pick up some sort of a random number. So in order to pick up a random number, we have to use something called as a random library. Import random. In order to use a random library, we are going to import random. Again, please don't try to understand too much about this. Just follow what I'm doing so that you get a live experience of how coding is done in Python. And what I want you to observe is it is pretty smooth to really write a code, and you can see how fast we can actually develop a code and start working on it. And that's exactly what I want to show you here. Okay, so I'm just going to pick up a random number. So let's say a computer's number. Let me call it as CN. CN means the number chosen by the computer. Okay, I'll say random rand int. So 1 comma 100. 1 comma 100. So I suggest to keep your mics in mute so that it doesn't disturb others. Okay? Please keep it in mute. Make sure all of you please check your mics and make sure that it is in mute. Thank you so much. Okay, so the computer is going to pick up a random integer here. Okay, random integer here. So we have a random number. The next thing is we have to ask the user what is the number that the computer is computer has picked up. So how do I get that? So I'll call it as user number. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll just take the input. So input of. So I'll just write some prompt. What is your guess? Okay. So this is where you have to guess. Okay. I'll just pick up the random. I'll just pick up the user defined number. The next thing is I have to compare the number chosen by the computer and the user number. So un equal to cn. Okay. So if un equal to cn, what is it I have to do? Print. You guessed it. You guessed it right. Okay. So he congratulations. Okay. So this is how this is what you would do. Elif, that is Elif, if it doesn't get it right, if user number is greater than the computer's guessed number, so let's say the number is not correct, get something lower. So this is the message I wanted to print, isn't it? Let's print that. Okay. Now there is also another condition where the user number can be less than the computer's number. In such case, I will say else print get something higher. So I just want to print this message. Print this message. Now, this is not something which I'll have to do only one time, but I'll have to repeat it for several times. I will have to repeat it for several times. So in such case, what I'll do is I'll say trials. I'll just give them some trials. Okay. Trials equal to 0. Okay, I'll say while trials less than or equal to, so I'm going to give them 10 trials. In which in within those 10 trials, he is supposed to guess it. Okay. And what I'll do is I'll just break the loop here, because he need not continue after he has guessed anything right. But before I pick up a user number, so I'll just increment the trial. Trials plus equal to 1. Trials plus equal to 1. As you can see here, trials equal to 0 as long as trials is less than 10. Trials is less than 10. Trials plus equal to 1. So I'll just get the user input here. I'm just going to compare the user input and I go on. So finally, I will say, so if trials less than 5, print, I'll say excellent playing. Playing. Else, try again. Try once again. something like that. Some sort of a message I can give back to the user. As you can see, what I've done is I've just put some sort of a banner here. I've put some sort of a banner here, some message, okay, and I'm just going through the gaming loop. This is what we call as the gaming loop, and finally we get this. Finally, we are printing this message here. Okay, so we'll just print this message. So that's how it is. Okay, so we have this guess my number game. For those of you who are for those of you who are starting with Python, this should give you a good example on how Python will be really useful in solving problems, right? So that is what I just intended to show you. But let's invoke this particular game and let's see what best how exactly it runs. Okay, so let's see this. See. Guess my number game. So in this game, the computer picks a number. You need to guess it. So let's say I'll guess 35. Number is not correct. Something lower. So it is asking me to guess something lower. Let's say I'll name 15. Again, it is asking me to guess something lower. Let's say I'll say 5. Something lower. So is it 1? Something higher. So let me take a wild guess, 3. So the number should be 2 now. You guessed it right, congratulations. I won't say because I took multiple trials here, so more than 5 trials I took here. So this is what we call as the guess my number game, and as you saw, we could within about hardly 15 minutes, 15 or 20 minutes, we could actually solve a problem using Python. And if you were to do the same thing with some other programming language, it would have taken a little more time, and it would have been it would have taken a little more effort, right? So this one, the reason I just showed you this is for all the beginners that who are attending our webinar today, just to give a quick look at what Python can actually do. So this is only a simple example that I've taken, and Python can actually do much more. Okay. Now, let's connect this to the actual topic of webinar of our webinar today. Now, what if you want to play this game on a website? So you see, I'm trying to play this game in my computer, isn't it? I'm trying to play this game. I'm trying to play this game on the computer. Okay. Now, that being said, there might be certain occasions where you might want to play this game on the internet. Okay, on the internet, probably. Okay, so one request, and I think there is quite a bit of a disturbance from somebody's mic. I just suggest that please check your mics and keep it under mute. So that would be helpful for everybody. Right. So there are a couple of requests on the thing. Yeah. So you need Django. So that's exactly what the webinar is. But there are a few people who are absolutely fresh to Python, so they need to know what Python is. So they need to really get a flavor of what Python is. Hence, they can connect to what Django is all about. Okay. Then we start the screen recorder. Okay, so we already have the screen recorder on, so we will have an arrangement to actually share it with you at a later point. Thank you so much. Right. So coming to this, so there is a actual scenario here. Let's say we have this guess my number game, and we are actually playing this on my computer, on the local computer. So if I give you this code, you will be able to play it in your computer. So that's the idea. But what if I want this game to be on the internet? I should be able to help people download my game, play that game, or help people play this game online on things like that. So how would you do that? Okay, so that's a big question we have, and that's exactly when Python Django will be really good. useful. Python-Django will be really useful. Now, though I'm not going to show you how this game is going to be developed on Python-Django, I'm going to introduce you how it can help you, and I'll just try to connect those ideas about how this game could be implemented in Python-Django. Right? Now, coming to our main topic, so that is Python-Django webinar. So first thing, let us say if you want to create a game or share some information over the internet, the first thing is we need to know how to connect these internets, how to connect the internet. So what do you mean by internet? The internet is a place where all the computers are interconnected through some sort of a protocol. So the protocol that is going to be used will be the Ethernet. Now our challenge will be how to communicate between the computers. See, the process is very simple. We just have to send some data to the computer which is sitting there. Fine, but how? That's a big question. That's a big question we have. So in order to solve this challenge, we need to know a few concepts. First, we need to know what is addressing. Suppose you want to go from one place to another place in a bus. So obviously you will see that there is a board in the bus saying where the bus goes, right? So that's the basic that's the name of the place. Just like that. So whenever you are sending some data over the internet, it needs to know where it is supposed to go and or where it is supposed to go and stop. Okay. Now that is achieved by addressing. Now how addressing is done, I'll let you know in a bit. So these concepts are really important when you want to know Django. And then what is the protocol that will be used for data transport? What is the protocol that will be useful for data transport? Now, these are the two main issues that we will be dealing with before we actually create any web application. Because web application is that is what web application does. You may connect the computers through Ethernet, but in order to drive the data transmission, there must be some sort of an application inside. In both the computers, both in the computer that is sending the data and also in the computer that is receiving the data. So both computers must have some sort of an application. That is what we are interested in. Okay. Now, if you look at the network addressing mechanism, okay, so let us say there are two computers here and it is connected through some sort of a network. Now, each network has got an address like this. So it will be having 4 numbers like this, separated by dots. Okay, this is what we call as the IP address. This is what we call as the IP address. Each number is 8 bits long, and there are 4 bits. It will be 32 bits in total. Okay, so this IP address is 32 bits in total. This is the IPv4 address. So nowadays we also have IPv6 address. So let's not worry about that. So this is IPv4 address 204.172.12.4. So that is what we call as the IPv4 address. Each computer node in the network is identified by a very specific IP address. Okay. So what happens is, whenever you try to address a computer in the network, we use this address. And this address plays a very crucial role in transmitting data. Okay. And then we also have to understand what is a port. So there are 2 types of ports. One is a physical port that you see in most of, in all the computers have got physical ports. You see in most of the computers, there is an HDMI port, there is an Ethernet port, there is a USB port. These are all called ports and they are physical ports. Now, the software applications can also have ports. Software applications can also have ports. They are called as sockets, which we're going to talk about in a bit. And they also are specified by some sort of a number here. So this number can range anywhere from 0 to 65535. Okay. So here in this example, so the IP address of this computer is 205.172.12.4, and the port at which the application is running is 425. To that port, the data is being transmitted, and on this particular computer, the data is received in port 80, and the IP address of this particular computer is 82.94.237.218. See, that is the scenario of the internet, the computers connected in the internet. So the first thing that we need to understand is this. This concept has to be really understood. Now, there are some standard ports which all computers will have. So these are the standard ports. 21, 22, 23, so FTP, SSH, Telnet. So these are the things that will be addressed by these ports. 25 will be your SMTP. And so this is the SMTP port that will be used by your Google or any other mailing application that you might be having. Then there is a POP3 server and several things like this. So this is just to keep you aware of what this is all about. These are the standard ports. But most importantly, in order to develop a Django application, we need to understand something called as the client-server concept. Now we have seen from all these slides the challenge we had. So how to how the challenges, what kind of issues we need to understand first, and how these issues are solved, and most importantly, the next step would include how to develop applications using the client-server concept. Okay, you must understand that when you connect two computers, each endpoint will be running some sort of a software program. Okay, so the one which there will be, when you connect computers in the network, some computers is going to request data and some computers is going to share the data. For example, in your computers, you open up the browser and you will just type in some website. So you're basically requesting the data. And whichever site you request, that is hosted in some sort of machine or a server, and that is going to provide you the data. Okay, so you understand the scenario. So again, request people to mute their mics. Right. Okay, so coming back to this client-server concept, so each endpoint is running a program. Okay, and some programs is going to request the data. Some program will be providing the data. So there is always a requesting data and providing the data. I gave you a quick example here. So whenever you open up a website, or whenever you open up your browser and tell some website, let's say facebook.com, so you're trying to request the internet to provide some data. So since you have specified facebook.com, there is a Facebook server that is going to send you some data, right? So that is an application which will provide you the data. The one which requests for data is called as client. The one which provides the data is called as the server. Now, one which provides the data is called as a server. As you can see here, the browser is the application which requests for the data. The web application which is sitting on the other machine is what provides the data. So each of these machines have their own IP addresses and ports. So we also keep that in the background of our understanding. Now what happens is there is a request response cycle that is established. There is a request response cycle that is established here. The request response cycle goes like this. So most network programs use this request response model based on the messages. Initially, the client sends a request message. Okay, so the request message could be something like this. Get. So this is called as a get request. So generally, the request message goes in the form of HTTP. HTTP is a protocol, hypertext transfer protocol. Hypertext transfer protocol. moment. Let me check 1 second. Okay, so hopefully, let me see if it is okay. It should be resolved. Okay, anyway, so the client sends a request message. Client sends a request message in the form of HTTP. Remember, HTTP is a hypertext transfer protocol. Okay, so hypertext. So all the instructions are sent as a hypertext. Okay, so that's what happens here, and the server is going to accept that request, understands what is there in the request, and it is going to send some information back to the client. And this is how the server sends back a response message. So this is a response message that is also a HTTP message. So this looks like a text, but it is not an ordinary text. It is hypertext. Why? The reason why we call it as hypertext is because it is not just text, plain text, because it has got several identifier, the markups, and things like that. Okay, so that's what is contained in these request response messages, and it is called as hypertext. And the protocol is called hypertext transfer protocol. Okay. Now it is based on this request response cycle we develop our web applications. Okay. Now Django is meant for creating that kind of a software. Okay. Django is meant for creating that kind of a software. Let me talk about Django right now. Let's connect all our concepts that we have discussed so far to Django. Now, why should we know Python here? Because Django is a Python web framework, a web framework that is supposed to be developed using Python. Okay, so that's why you need to be really good with Python before you actually work with Django. Okay, now it is versatile because, as I said, when a client requests for a message, there must be a way in which you can understand what this message is all about, and we have to extract all the instructions, and we have to process that, and so on and so forth. You have to do a lot of things like that, isn't it? All these things are handled by Django in a very, very easy way. So that is why it is versatile, and it doesn't give you any sort of difficulty in trying to handle all these problems. Python gives you a lot of functions, but Django gives you a lot of functions to extract all the information, process all the information, and you don't have to really worry about doing all that. You can actually focus on your basic application development, your actual application development, right? So we don't have to really worry about anything, in fact, here. And it adopts something called as an MVC framework. What is an MVC framework? M stands for model, V for view, C for controller. So MVC framework, and I'm going to talk about MVC framework in a bit. And Django is best suited for web backend, server-side software development. Server-side software development. Server-side software development. Right. So there is a request on the chat box. So the MVC full form is Model View Controller. I'm going to talk about in a bit. So there is, I think there must be someone who has kept the mic in. Yeah. So I'm just trying to check. Give me a moment. Let me check if I can mute everyone. Mr. Nilesh, let me tell you that. See, MVC architecture is the generic architecture which a lot of frameworks talk about. The reason we talk about template is something is in Django is because we use a lot of generic HTML templates in Django for HTML processing. That's why they have renamed it as model view template. But however, no framework is going to be without a controller, right? So we need to understand that. You're right in saying a model view template, but that is the most modern, definition of it. Yeah. So modern definition of it. Modern definition. Okay, so just give me a moment. Just give me 2 minutes. Let me check whose mic is in it, and then yeah, Snehal, I'm just going to do that. Let me try and force. So I can't force people to mute.
This is Kalyan here. Kindly check your mic and kindly put it in on mute. It's causing lot of disturbances. Please check your mic once again. Those
Just checking the status of everybody who's. I think almost everybody is in mute, except for a couple of people. That is Raj Nandini Singh, Ravi, and one more input called Raj Nandini Singh and Ravi. Raj Nandini Singh.
Yes.
So can you please is your mic on mute?
My mic is on mute only.
Yeah, so it's good now. So how about Ravi? Ravi is on mute. Yeah, so good. So Rajnani Singh, you're using a mobile phone or anything like that? So if you're using a mobile phone or any other devices, please check your thing. So hopefully everything is good now. Okay. How about Suraj? Suraj is online. Suraj is online. Please check your mic. It doesn't seem muted. Suraj. Yeah. So good. So Suraj is still not responding. Maybe if he's not online, probably we can remove that. Okay. Great. So it's good now. So please make sure your mics are at mute. So if you are having any questions, only then you unmute your mic and then let's talk. So let's not, let's make sure the webinar goes smoothly, right? A lot of people are interested and they need to interact. So a few people who are not really responding, please keep your, I mean, probably we could remove them. Probably they're not near the computer, so that could cause a few problems, right? All right. So anyway, so let's come back to this. Okay, there was a small thing about model view controller. MVC means model view controller. So that was the technique that is adopted for developing these kind of front-end technology, back-end technologies, right? So Django is best suited for web backend development. So whenever you create a web application, there will be something called as a backend and also something called as a front end. Okay, so what is a backend and what is a front end? When I say backend, it means that we are talking about software that is going to sit on the server. And when I say front-end technology, we are going to talk about the software or applications that is going to sit in the client side for sending requests and rendering the information that is obtained from the server. The example for front-end application is our browser. Now, the browser consists of what? It consists of it consists of HTML processor, it consists of CSS processor, and it consists of JavaScript processor. Processor, I mean, it's not a physical processor. It is capable of processing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript is what that will be used for rendering your information. So that is the format in which the server will send the data. Right? So that's what happens. Now, Django is something which is going to sit on the server to accept the requests, understand the requests, pull out information from the resources, convert it into an appropriate format, and send it to the client or the system that requested that software as a response. Okay, so we're going to send a response from the server side. So that's what actually Django does. So let's talk a bit about what a model view controller is. Okay. Now, when I say model, so it contains all the data. So model means data. So I'm just trying to explain everything in layman terms. So you don't have to really complicate things. So model means data. So when something is when a server gets a request, obviously there must be some data to respond back, isn't it? And where do we get the data from? Where does the server get the data from? So all the data and the data related logic will be kept separately in one place. So that is what we call as a model. Okay? All models contain data. Okay. Now, what is a view? Now, view means you take the model, create a format in which the client can show it to the user. Okay, you take the data. So from the model, you pull out the data, format in such a way that it can be shown to the user. So that how it is supposed to be formatted and how it is supposed to be sent, that is defined by the view. So the view renders content to the user and relays user commands to the controller. Now, what this controller does? Now, controller synchronizes a lot of events. So controller is responsible for accepting the request from the client. Okay. Dismantling the request, because the request comes as a HTTP request. You have to dismantle the HTTP request to get specific commands or specific requests. That then the controller activates the models, relevant models, and once the models are activated, it is going to pull out the exact amount of data that is needed, and the views are going to, the views are going to access these data, and these views are sent back again to the controller, and the controller actually performs certain operations on these views before actually sending the response to the place where it was requested. Okay, so controller basically does a lot of things. So why? So before we actually really appreciate why this is really important, we need to see how websites were developed in the past. That was like 10 years back or 15 years back or something like that. All these logic used to sit in one single place, and everything had to be done manually. So models were created using all the databases, right? It's not that Django doesn't have databases, it has, but there is a different way in which it accesses databases. Let me tell you that. If there is a MySQL a database that is being used, the MySQL is supposed to be directly accessed, and the data is supposed to be pulled out as tables. And then the PHP was very popular at that point of time. The PHP programs used to process that data, apply logic on that data, and do a lot of things. And finally, it used to create the HTML content that would be sent as a response. So this is what was happening. But what happened as we move forward is a lot of industry giants, okay, so the veterans in the industry, they had already seen about 25, 30 years of web development. They had seen what are the natural processes that everybody adopts to develop some sort of a website. So all the best practices, okay, all the best practices, they brought into something called as frameworks. And they are available to us as functions. Okay. So give me a moment once again, and somebody else is talking here. Ravi, are you online? So please mute. I think your system is not muted. Yeah. Okay. So who else is here? So it's become very. Shirley Jiva Mala. So Shirley, please mute your system. Shirley, are you online? Please mute your mic. Okay. So let's see if I think a few people are not sitting in front of their computers. Okay. Anyway, so what happened was like there was a way in which websites used to get developed, web applications used to get developed in the past. That was about 10, 15 years back. Now, during this time, veterans in the industry or the engineers in the industry, they had done a lot of work on developing websites, and all the best practices that they were following, they brought into these frameworks. And Django is one framework that captures all those best practices in the industry that was there for the last 10 to 15 years. So Django is not developed just like that. It was developed over a period of time. A lot of good things were added into it, and one of the things that they brought into Django is the segregation of different things. What are the different things? Any website should have data. Any website should have something called as the views, which deal with how the data is supposed to be presented. Okay, there is data. There is a logic for presenting the data. Then there is the logic or the algorithm that works on the data to create the requested data and to be embedded into the presentation data, right? That is why we had the controller. So all these three things, these are the three main things of any website. So any website has got data, the logic to present data, the logic to process data. Very simple, data, logic to present data, logic to process data. And these are the things that we call as models, views, and controllers. Models means that it refers to the data itself. View means the logic to present data. The controller means the logic to process the data. Now, what are the different processes we do? So first we need to understand what request has come in. Second, from the request has to be dismantled. After dismantling the request, we need to understand the request and invoke appropriate models. When I say invoke appropriate models, we have to fetch proper data. Now, once the appropriate data is pulled out, we have to invoke appropriate view logic, that is the logic to create presentation data. So generally the presentation data in the form of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Right? So we blend all of them and we create a lot of dynamic web pages. Now, once we have the presentation data, the controller is supposed to take it and send it as a response. So these are the things controller does. Now, how do we apply this to Django? Okay. Now, the models definitely refer to data. So Django should somehow connect to some sort of a a database. Okay. Now, in Django, what happens is you don't access the database directly. You don't access the database directly. Django gives you database APIs. The Django APIs are capable of performing the background database transactions, and it will help you push and pull data from the database without you having to go through all these steps that are necessary to create a table or modify records or delete records and all those things. All that you have to do is you just have to call the APIs which perform the CRUD operations. So in databases, there is something called CRUD operations. What is CRUD? Create, read, update, delete. CRUD. Create, read, update, delete. So CRUD operations. So creating a database, creating data inside it, retrieving the data. Reading the data means retrieving the data. Create, retrieve, update, delete. So these are the CRUD operations that can be performed. So model here doesn't refer to only the database. The model also gives you a layer around the database which perform CRUD operation, and those CRUD operation APIs are available to us as simple Python functions. That's what Django gives us. Now views. Now how are views created? Now we have the data and the controller processes this data to create the appropriate response data. Now this response data is supposed to be formatted in a HTML file along with CSS and JavaScript. Right. Now these views has all the logic to perform that thing with the help of templates. Okay, with the help of templates. Now the view has access to all the templates. Now what exactly is a template? Now every request response needs some sort of a HTML response, isn't it? Now, for every type of response, we don't want to have a separate HTML file. So we want to have one HTML file which we call as a template, and it will have certain variables, and we can also invoke Python functions inside that template, and that's exactly what Python offers us. We can create generic templates and you can connect the views. Views refers to the logic for organizing the data or formatting the data. With the help of templates, the views will pull out the appropriate data, pushes it into the templates, and it forms the exact response that is needed by the controller to send it back. Okay, that is the view. That's what the view does. And the controller does a lot of things. I've already mentioned that. Right? Accepting the request, synchronizing operations between models, views, templates, and all that, and creating a response and sending it. So it does all those things. In Django, what do we have? So we have APIs to work with models. We write functions, simple Python functions to create views, and finally, the Django framework itself is the controller. We don't have a separate controller. The Django framework itself is the controller. And that's one of the reasons people think there is no controller, but they call it as they have a separate way of talking about this. Let me draw what people actually think here about Django. So people think that there is a model here. So let's say I'll create a model here. Let's say models here. We have models, and we have sorry, model, and we have the view, views, and the views are actually derived from. Let me write it like this, so it will be good. The views are basically taken from templates, or it uses templates to really get the data. So what happens is, let me write another simple diagram which will be helpful. So so views makes use of the models and also the templates. Okay, and this entire thing is inside another box. You can just view things like this. Okay, so let me call this by a different thing. Let me send it back. Style. So I'm just trying to draw this diagram to because there was a question on why it is called model view template technique, not the uh, not the model view, not the model view controller. Okay, so it needs to be understood properly, otherwise there will be a lot of confusion. Something back. So again, somebody is on. Let me send it back. Okay, let's not worry about it. So see, this basically what I'm trying to draw is I'm trying to put one box around this like this. Okay, and let's try once more. One last time I'll try because I'm just in a mode where. So we'll just use this. This makes a lot of sense. I'm so sorry about that. Okay. Anyway, no, that's not really an issue. Or what I can do is something blocking this. Otherwise, slide. Yeah. So here it is. Okay. So this is what it is, and the Django encompasses all these things. So the controller will be this would be your controller. The entire box is a controller. And the controller is nothing but your Django. Django framework itself is your controller. So the reason why Django is called like that, so that itself is your controller. since the Django has got this kind of arrangement, what they say is that Django is a model view template framework. Model view template framework. Now, the Django encompasses all the the APIs for models, APIs for the facilities for writing our views, and also facilities for creating templates. I'm going to show you in a quick demo on how these things are there. So what I'm trying to show you, tell you here is, so Django is arranged like this. It's actually a model view controller framework, but they also say model view templates framework. It is also correct. The reason is because Django itself takes the responsibility of synchronizing, controlling, and managing all these APIs and functions and settings and everything. And that's what the Django framework does. And this is all under the control of user. So from the user perspective, it's a model view template, but from the framework perspective itself, it does all these jobs. So this is the jobs. Model view controller are the set of jobs or the tasks that any modern framework should do, right? So it's what it should do. So there must be something for creating, keeping models. So when I say model, please imagine that there is a database inside it, and surrounding it there is some sort of a logic. You just that is what we call as a model. So if I have to redraw this again, so this will be something like this. So this will be your database. Let's say this is the let me call it as MySQL database. Okay, this is a MySQL database, and MySQL is not the only database that is supported by Django. You can have n number of them, so there is no need for you to stick to MySQL all the time. So it depends on which company is using what. And I can have one more box around it like this. Let me send it back. Give it some other style. Okay, so this is what we call as a model. So when I say model, this represents this entire thing. This entire thing is a model. So it's not just the database. It means there is a intrinsic database, but what we see is this the blue border that we see. We don't have direct access to our database. We access all the things of this through the CRUD API. So I can just write something like this. So we have the CRUD API. CRUD. What is CRUD? Create, read, update, delete. Read or retrieve. Create, retrieve, update, delete. So that is what means CRUD. CRUD API. API means application peripheral interface. You see, peripheral. There is a term. Why do we use that peripheral? Peripheral means because it is at the endpoint we access it. We don't really deal with MySQL. There is a lot of logic which is setting in this blue box to access this SQL that is hidden from us. We don't have to really worry about that, right? So we all access this entire thing through the CRUD API. And that's what Django gives us. It gives us a lot of API to deal with this database, right? So this will all be clear. This entire structure will be clear when I actually show you what this is. Delete. Oh, what is D in CRUD? So create, read, update, delete. Read can also be retrieve. Okay, sometimes people also say it as retrieve. Create for creating databases. Retrieve, once you create, you should also be able to pull out the data. Update, so which means modifying the data. Delete, if you want to delete some data from this thing. Okay, so this is what actually it does. So model view template is also correct, but if you look at the working principle of Django, it will be model view controller. But if you see the structure in which all the APIs are presented, so or the organization of our project, it will be model views templates. So I'll show you that, why we see model views templates and where this Django will be sitting. Okay, so that I think you should really be understanding right now. Now let's go ahead and see live how to actually create a Django project. I'll just give you a very simple example to show you how the requests come in, requests are taken outside, how it gives you response and things like that. And I'll also show you how an image or something like that can be actually served using the Django server. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So remember that you should have some sort of knowledge in Python. Okay, so because all the views, all the CRUD operations or the model operations, all the settings, okay, all these are written in Python. All these are written in Python. Hence, you need to have some sort of knowledge in Python. That's very important. Okay. Now, you should also have some sort of knowledge in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript because the templates mean that. So the templates mean how do you organize your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And inside that, your data from the model is going to sit. Okay, so that's what the views create. Okay, that's what the views create. So you need to know that as well. So you need to have knowledge of Python and knowledge of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And that's the reason why I showed Python, because if you do not know Python, you won't be able to do anything in Django. That's for sure. Python is a prerequisite, strict prerequisite. And this you have, if you have basics, it's more than sufficient. Okay, let's go ahead and try to create a Django project. So in order to create a Django project, I'm going to make use of the Atom text editor. So you can, download the Atom text editor like this. So you can just let me show you that. So just so here you say atom.io. Okay. So this is the Atom.io. So just download it, and it will help you install this text editor. The good thing about this text editor is you can see all your files on the left side. You have access to your terminal because this terminal is really important. And you have space for actually creating your code here, right? All right. Now, now how to create a project? Okay, how to create a Django project. Now, please remember that Django allows you to create project in terms of smaller apps. Okay, so let me create one more slide here and show you what I really mean by that. Okay, so what it means is, so Django apps. So Django apps. So the apps are like small things that actually perform certain things. It's like so we can have a small app like this app one. Okay, so you can have multiple apps. I'll tell you what these apps are. You can have a lot of apps like this. Okay, and your website is basically a collection of apps like this. Your website is basically a collection of apps. Okay, so let's say if you open up any website, which you can pick up anything like this, you can pick up any website and check that out. You will see there will be a home page, there will be contact us, there will be about us, there will be services, we'll have products and everything like that. So we'll have tab for everything, and then there is a way in which you can enter your details or log in and things like that, isn't it? Each one of this thing is called as an app in Django. Okay? It's called as an app in Django. So Django allows you to create small apps and integrate them in a larger application, and that is the main application that will be sitting. But this application could be split into smaller parts, and these smaller parts can be individually designed as apps, tested separately, and then integrated. That gives you a better visibility about what each app is doing and how it is supposed to interact. And moreover, it helps you debug these apps at a much better way, in a much better way. Okay, let's try and understand this. Hopefully this is understood. So what I'm going to do right now is, so I'm just going to create this. That's the main app, a main web app. And inside that, I'm going to have one more application. I'm just going to stick to one application, and I'm going to show you how this thing actually really works. Let's go ahead. Let's switch back to our IDE. So what I'm going to do is inside webinars, I am going to list this and see what is there inside it. Okay, so there is something called Python-Django. So let's go into that Python-Django. So I'll just go into Python-Django. So here is some demo things. So, but these are already created. These are just to show you how exactly it is, but I'm going to show you how to create that first. Okay. Let me call it as first web app. So, okay, let me call it as. Let me create something called Django. So Django projects are created using Django admin. Okay? Django projects are created using Django admin. So if I press this, it will tell you the different things that Django admin can do. Now, what I'm interested in now is to start a project, start a new project. So what I'm going to do is Django admin start project, some sort of, let's say, demo project. So let me call it as demo project. So the name of the website now will be demo project, or the web application is demo project. Okay, so let me do that. Now what happens if you look at this thing, you see the demo project has been created, and along with that there is a manage.py that has been created. So this is something which Django inserts as soon as you create a Django project. So this will not be created ordinarily, right? This will be created only when you start a project using Django admin. Apart from that, it is by default. Project is the controller app. It has got all these settings for our project. See, these are all the settings for our project. So these are the default default applications that are there here. Okay, these are the different applications we have here. These are the different middleware middleware programs we are interested in here, because this is extremely important. Because in order for a website to work, there are a lot of things that is needed. Okay. Then there are certain templates. So this is where we actually specify where is the template directory and a lot of things like that. So I'm not going to go into all the details here. So just to show you what Django project consists of. So here we specify what is the database we are going to talk to. So here, the database engine that we are going to talk about is SQLite3, which is Python's specific database. So SQLite3 is Python's or Pythonic database, which is basically a database where you can actually fire SQL commands and work with SQL commands. It works. At the same time, SQLite3 gives you a very lightweight database for you to experiment on certain things. So SQLite3 is free to use, and you can just make use of this for very small web applications and things like that. So these databases are the ones which constitute the models, right? That's the core of the models. So I told you that MySQL can be here. Now, in this case, well, by default, what we are getting, SQLite3. Okay, so that's what we are going to do. This is where we're going to specify that. So if you want MySQL3, you can just specify that here. You want to specify an Oracle database, you can specify it here. This is where everything happens, and so you have to check what is the backend for each of those models and write it here. So for SQLite3, it will be django.db.backends.sqlite3. Then there are these password validators and the language and a lot of other topics. So again, I'm not going to go into the details of all these things. It will be in a detailed course that we are going to host at a later point of time. Then we have something called urls.py. urls.py. Okay, so I'm going to talk about these questions that are being posted. So you keep your questions. I'm just going to answer each one of them. So, so Nilesh is saying how to set the environment. I'm going to talk about that. So Ravi is asking how to install the database and all sorts of things like that. So I'm going to talk about all those things. Keep the questions, because if I deviate here, so the flow will be disrupted. So let me complete the explanation of how the project works, and then let's address all those issues, because Django cannot be covered in just 1 hour or something like that. It's something which we have to sit and work for about 5 to 6 days, or something like 30 to 40 hours of training is necessary to really create a very good web application using Django. It's pretty deep, you know. I'm just showing you the overview. We are barely touching the surface, right? Now, URLs consist of all the URLs that this Django project supports. Now, the question is, what exactly is a URL? Now, in order to understand that, we have to come here. So let us say, let's go back to this client-server concept. When the client requests something from the server, it has to, it is supposed to request a resource, a data resource. It is supposed to request a data resource by specifying the address of the resource that is there on the server. Okay, that is the address on the server. So every resource that is sitting on the server has got an address. And that address is what we call as the URL. So uniform resource locator. Right? Why is it uniform? Because every client has to use the same URL to point to that particular resource. So then resource locator doesn't, it simply means an address. That's it. Uniform address, uniform resource locators. So when we create a Django application, we need to specify what are all the URLs. Now, what URLs it supports depends on what are all the resources we are going to address or keep in that server, or in this web application, in the server application. Okay, so that is how we create our URLs. And the client is supposed to use the same URLs to access those web pages or web data or anything like that. And the WSGI Pi. Now, the WSGI is the lightweight server application. Okay, server application that enables you to run Django. Now, WSGI server is not a production level server. WSGI is a lightweight server which will be helpful for development purposes only. It will be helpful for development purpose only. But when you want to deploy this website at a later point of time, you have to have some sort of servers like Apache or Nginx, or you could do a lot of server application. There are a lot of server applications we can make use of that. WSGI is only a server application which is lightweight and useful for developing small scale Django applications, right? So please remember that. And then this manage.py, I have already told you. Manage.py is something which is commonly present in all Django environments, and that is what allows you to actually create a lot of stuff, right? Stuff for Django. Now, this is the basic outline which Django admin creates as soon as you start a Django project. As soon as you start a Django project, okay? Okay. Any free server to deploy in production? Ravi, keep these questions. So I would like to answer these questions at the end. Because you have any number of questions, that doesn't matter, but let me go through the flow and show you what is the entire outline of Django. So there are a lot of things. Yeah, to quickly answer your questions, free server, yes, Nginx is a free server. Tomcat is also a free server. You can actually use it. Sorry, not the Tomcat. Tomcat is for Tomcat is a Java server. So yeah, you can use XAMPP also. It's a good server also. It's a good server as well. XAMPP is there. You can also use LAMP. That can also be useful. LAMP, right? LAMP is also there. So a lot of Linux servers are free of cost and they're available. You can use it. Yeah, it is in Linux. Yes. Okay. Coming to this, so how to run this basic thing? So this is the basic outline. You see, as soon as I simply create a project or start a project like this, a lot of things are already configured, and it is this basic skeleton web application is available to you, and you simply start from this point to start developing your applications and move on with your application. You don't have to worry about uh, setting up a database or anything like that. Everything is set up, and it is available to you as a package. And later, at a later point of time, you can always tweak it. That's a different thing altogether. But whatever is needed for web application, it is already present here, and you can quickly start with the development process without having to deal a lot with setup. Right? Okay, that's one of the advantages Django gives. So let me go ahead and run this project. So the way to run this project is, so we are in Python-Django. We need to go to demo project. Let's go into that particular website. In that website, if I say dir, so there will be manage.py and the demo project, which consists of all these things. Right? Now, what I'm going to do is, I'll say Python manage.py run server. So the moment you see this itself is a simple startup Django app, which is capable of running and invoking as well. So what I'm going to do is I'll just run this server. Okay, hopefully it is okay. It is not running here. Let me go back to this thing, command line. So here, Python. Sorry. So we have to go into demo project, Python manage.py and server. Okay, so let me do that. The moment I do that, the server is invoked. And where did the server start? The server started at HTTP 127.0.0.1 at a port 8000. So that's the reason why we wanted to know a bit of our networking concepts, right? So what we have to do is we have to use this to invoke our server. So the server is actually running, and the place where it is running is in my own computer. So I have to invoke it. So exactly. So that's the local host. 127.0.0.1 is the local host. I'm running the server in my own computer. I could actually invoke it from somewhere else, but I'm going to invoke it here itself in one of my browsers. Let me open up the browser. So the browser is basically our client application. So the server is running here, and I'm going to connect to that server using this IP address. When I say this, you should get the Django from it worked. It says, congratulations on your first Django powered page. So this is how fast you can get set up a web application. Now you can start adding details, like if I can have a hello page for this. Okay, so I can have a hello page for this. When I say hello page, so it should say hello world or something like that. Hello world or something like that. Let's see how to do that. So right now, if I say this, it is not going to say. It says page not found because that's not there. But what if I want to create a hello page where I want to see some information here? Okay, so how do I do that? How do I approach that? So that's what I'm going to do right now. So here, also observe here, there was a certain request that were coming in, right? Hello, get get root, and things like that. What do these mean? These are the HTTP requests. I told you the requests come from the client, and what Django is doing is it is processing these requests. Every request that comes in here. So let me say Control C to break this. Okay. So the very moment a URL comes in, first it identifies what URL it is here in the URL patterns. Okay. Now from this URL, you get this URL. This is where it comes from first, and once it comes here, it figures out what is the view that is associated with it. So whenever you are creating a Django project, all that you have to do is you just have to pick up a URL of your choice. That's your that is something which you design, and you have to connect it with a view. Okay, view. You have to pick up a URL and connect a view. So that's the mapping that you have to do. In Django, development is that simple. You create as many URLs as you want, but you attach every URL to some view to perform some operation, right? How is it done? That is what we're going to see right now. First, let me create a URL for my requirement. Okay, so the requirement was I wanted to have a URL like this URL. Okay, so this is this is what we call as a raw string. So I just want a URL hello. URL for a hello. Okay, and the view that is going to be the view that is going to be attached here is hello view. So let me do something like this. Hello view. Okay. So how exactly it is done in all other things? Let me just a simple app here. And let me show you how it is done. So for use this project. See, this is how it is done. So a lot of URLs can be there, and each of those URL can have your URLs connected. URLs connected here. So that's exactly what I'm trying to do here now. Okay. So now let me close this. It's not needed. It's from a different project. I'm just going to show it the data. Okay. URLs Django 1. So this is the thing. But hello view, where will this hello view be present? Okay, so we have to add this. Okay, just I mean this is just this is what we call as the regular expressions. That I kind of can't deviate right now. Regular expression is just a pattern to check check or match certain patterns in a string, so those are there. So when we actually discuss a lot of Python, we'll actually talk about that. But here the thing that we want is this, and what it really means is this. Okay, so we are actually trying to create an IP address like this. Okay, HTTPS. Okay, or 27.0.0.1 5000 / hello. So this is what we are trying to see. Or this is what we are trying to see here. Okay, that's what I'm trying to see. So you don't have to specify this because Django already knows it. Okay, and the rest of the things after this, if it is starting with a hello, and in such case, if that particular URL comes, you execute the hello view. Now, what is this hello view? Now, hello view is very simple. Let me do something like this. Def hello view, and you just put a request here. Now here, return. So you can return HTTP response. And you can specify some sort of a heading here. Hello world. So this is your HTTP response. Here is the HTTP response. Why is require admin URL in first line? Why is it needed? So see, it is not something which we write, but Django, when it created, it gave it. So it is there in everything actually. So if you take urls.py here, is there, so it will be there. So if you take any project here, so the first, it will by default include admin. Okay, and the reason why it needs, it may not be useful here in URL patterns, but definitely this is something which will be useful at a later point of time. Okay? Admin interface for Django is really required for controlling separate process without actually getting into the code. Okay, so there is an admin panel for it. Okay, and moreover, as you can see here, you see this, and admin site URLs are also included certain times, which I may not include, or I may include sometimes in my development thing. But at the production level environment, we always give some sort of an admin. Right. So what happens is, I'll show you. So when I invoke this, it goes into admin site URLs. That is, there'll be a lot of admin controls that is offered to the website, and that's what it provides. And whenever you want that is accessed through this admin module. So it is present in the contrib main module, and inside that there is an admin module. And we just have to import that. If you want an admin interface to be present, and by default, exactly, so that is for the admin dashboard, yes. So by default, when you create a demo project, Django automatically provides it. So that's why we are seeing it here. Okay, that's why we are seeing it here. You see, this will be there by default. If you don't want to use it, you can just leave it. But it is recommended that you use it, right? Okay, I was. So let me show you a view. So you see this, the view is this. So view is basically a function. In Django, a view is simply written as a function. It's that simple. That's why Django is preferred. So view, it could be really you might think it is a really complicated logic that comes out and all sorts of things like that. But Django makes it very simple. Simply write a function and attach it, as simple as that. Okay. So what we need is, we need this HTTP response, and I'm going to answer that question now. What is the purpose of include? Okay. So sometimes what happens is, you write URLs in so different apps have got different URLs. Sometimes you write URLs in different apps separately. And if you want, and you don't try to write all the URLs in one single place here. So what I would do is, I might want to say that include in this main thing. So there's a main URL file. So in that, I want to include the app URLs of certain app. So I'll say include URLs from that app. So that's why include is required there. Okay. So I just want to have this. Now again, Django HTTP, I need a HTTP response. Okay. Now that is what I did. Now you see the view is here. View is here. Hello view, and the name of the view is called hello view. And as soon as there is this thing coming, the hello is thing, this view will be invoked. So this function will execute, and the function is returning a HTTP response. It's a very simple request response cycle that I'm trying to set up here. Okay, request response cycle that I'm going to set up here. Just to let you know, so this HTTP response is a function that actually sends a message in the form of a HTTP response, because when a client requests, you have to send a HTTP response only. Any other response will be declined. It has to be a HTTP response, and that's why I'm using a HTTP response here. Okay. All right. So now let us go ahead and run this particular thing once again and see what happens. Okay. So demo project. So Python manage.py run server. So let's take this and let's try to run the server. So we have the server running here. Okay. Let me pick this up. So here is what we have. So let me run this. So it gives me page not found here. Okay. All right. So let's write hello. Okay. Can you see that? Hello. So I'm requesting hello. So this is the URL. This is the request. And see, this is the response. Now you can see, if you go here and say view source, and you'll see that that particular HTML response would have come here. So I'll just show you that. You see this? This is what I wanted to send. This is the HTML response, isn't it? So this is how our request response cycle actually works. Request response cycle actually works. So hopefully you got an idea about how this can be really useful. I mean, in writing your web applications. So did you have? Hopefully, I mean, we'll come to the doubts now. But what I wanted to show you is how to quickly write a view and how to supply a view. But what is the general practice? What is the general practice? We don't write views and URL patterns all in one single file. So we write views in views.py, URLs in urls.py, models in models.py, forms in forms.py, and like that. We keep everything separate and we blend in the main application that will be the urls.py. So demo project. So demo project is the main application that controls the entire application, and you can add one more app here. So if you want another app here, you can actually create another app. Let me stop the server here. See, so I can just say control here, control that. You can do that. And what we can actually do is, if you want to create another app, all that you have to do is Python manage .py start app first app. So if you do this, you can see the demo project has got a first app that is created here, and you can see all the initial initialization files are already here, and you can straight away write your views in this. Okay, you can straight away write your views in this. So basically, we never write views directly in the demo project. See, there is a demo project, and inside that there is a demo project app, which is the main controller. But this is the app that we will be interested in. So you see, when it comes to this, let me illustrate it properly. So here let's say this is app 1, app 2, app 3, app 4. These are the apps. But as soon as you create a Django application, there will be one more app like this, which is the main controller app. Okay, so on top of this, and this is where all the URLs come in. So whenever you punch in an URL, so straight away the URL actually is received by this guy. And this is the guy, and there is a urls.py inside this, and that is what is going to connect to all the other apps and pulls out the appropriate views. Okay, so that's what happens. So here will be your client. The client is going to punch in a URL here. Okay, so URL will be here. So when the URL comes, it is received by this app. Not the app 1, but there will be an app with the name of the project itself. So that is what actually it does. So if you have a demo project, there will be a demo project app. So that is the main app. And then there can be first app, second app, third app, fourth app, and things like that. And you can also see that there is something called DB SQLite 3. So as you can see here, you can see the encrypted version of that database. So this is the SQLite 3 database, and this is the model for this particular project. Now, what I'm going to do is, in order to clear some of the other doubts that you guys might be having, so what I'm going to do is, I'm keeping one more project here, a simple project, a beginner project that we actually teach in our classes, where we are trying to keep the URLs in the urls.py, views in the views.py, and all the static files like templates and things like that in separate file. Here, I'm not going to straight away send a HTML response, but I'm going to send a template, use a template to create a HTTP response. And I'm going to show you that. So how a template, okay, so that's what I'm going to answer right now. So you can just see it practically right here. Okay, so now here is the first project, and of course the first project is going to have the first project app. So as you can see, let's go ahead and see what is there in URLs. See, these are the things that we have in the URLs. Now, the first project has got a first app. So that is the app that we are going to work with. And the app is doing something. And whatever the URLs that are connected to first app, that are concerned with the first app, will be included here in the list of main URLs, URL patterns, using the include. So that's why I say include first app URLs. That is the URLs connected with first app that we have here. And then again, then there is a root URL that connects to either index.html or the index view. And there is an admin interface anyways here. Okay, so I'm just going to show you all these things in a bit. So this is the main app, so which has got all the URL patterns. So hopefully at this point of time, you should be able to understand what is the lingo I'm talking about, what are URLs and where it's coming from and what is the use of that. Now coming to the first app, let's see what is there in that first app. Now first app has got a few URLs that it is going to deal with, and it has got only one URL which connects straight away to view.index, and the name of that is an index. The name means it's like the view is given some name so that we can refer to it at a certain particular point of time inside a template. Okay, so that's what it is. Now I'm straight away saying it is going to execute a view called index. Okay, so this is the URL pattern, and it is going to execute a view called index. Now let's go ahead and see what does this index view do. Okay, so obviously we know the index will be written as a Python function. And where will it be written? I told you all the views are collected in a single file called views.py. So let's go here, and here is where you find the index. Now inside the index we have a dictionary, and it has got one variable called insert me, and the value for that is this. I'm coming on first app index HTML or some message like this just to showcase what I'm trying to do. And what I'm returning right now is supposed to be a HTTP response, but instead of sending a direct HTTP response, I'm going to use render, which internally uses HTTP response, and it is going to send the first app index.html template. And whatever is there in this index.html, is my voice not audible? Is it? How is it now? Is it okay? So it is going to render index.html template. This is the HTML template. And it is saying context equal to mydict. What does it mean? See, when I say HTML template, there is a difference between HTML file and a HTML template. HTML file is plain HTML file. That's it. It is a pure HTML, and it is strictly having HTML content and the related CSS and JavaScript content. Reference can be there. But a HTML template is something different. HTML template is a HTML file which has got Python variables inside it. Okay, so that we can supply the values to those variables from outside. Where do we supply the variables from? Outside. Outside means from the views. The views are the ones which pick up values from the models and send it to the templates. And the templates will put those values into those locations where variables are present, and a new HTML is created with that data, and it is sent outside as a response. Let's see how the template looks like. Okay, the template looks like this. So I keep all my templates in a separate folder called template. So this is how I organize an actual project. The first one I showed you is just for the sake of conceptual understanding, but when I organize an actual project, there is a way in which we organize it. I said each app is a folder. There are static files. There are several things here. So let me show you this. Index.html. Let me open this up. So this is a template. So template, HTML template. Now, how is it a HTML template? Let me show you that. Now you see, this is the HTML head. So this is fine. So it has got a head called Django guitar page. Okay, and have a CSS file connection. So there is a CSS file also for this. So I'm just going to show you that as well. And the body I have, hi, this is a picture of Django himself, and there is this see this thing. So this is what is the difference between a regular HTML file and a HTML template. Here I am saying source. If it is a regular HTML template, I would not have all these brackets and all sorts of things like that. I would have straight away written this. But I am saying source, static, and things like this. And I'm also specifying an alternative message if this doesn't get loaded. And at the same time, see this directive here. I'm just saying I'm trying to load static files also here. Static files also here. Okay, and let me go back to that URLs. So a lot of things are here. URLs, and I think the first tab URLs, and in the views it has got a context called my date. Insert me. Okay, so it is picking up first tab index or insert me. So insert me is no longer here. So what I'll do is, let's say, so I'll also use one more thing here. Let's say I'll have again h2, and inside that I will put a Python variable called insert. Where is this coming from? It's coming from the Python view. So wherever this variable is there, so how does this Django know that this is a variable, not HTML content? Because I'm writing it inside double flower brackets. So this double flower brackets is the one which differentiates between normal HTML content and the variable of a template. Now this variable is what is referenced by this view, first tab HTML, and the context is my dictionary, and there is a variable called insert me. Wherever insert me is there, it is going to replace it with this variable, and that's the real purpose of writing a template. So whenever you have variable data, okay, where the data is not really fixed, every time there is a request, different type of data has to be embedded inside it, and it should be sent, and that's exactly when you use templates. Okay, now this is done. So let's say I have that insert me put in this index.html. Insert me in HTML, and you should see there will be a message, and there should be an image, and then there is the variable name. So this is the HTML template. Now let's take a look at what are the static contents of this. So inside static contents, we have the my style CSS. This is a very, very simple CSS file where the h1 header has got the color red. As simple as that. It can have a detailed CSS also. I'm just showing you the CSS can also be included. At the same time, you can also include your JavaScript files. Plus, you can also include images. So this is the Django guitar JPEG. So this is the image that I'm going to use. This guy, the name of this guy is called Django. So that's why I'm going to use that. So the my style CSS is here, and the index.html is referencing some message, some reference to a static file, some also a CSS file, and also a variable from the template, sorry, the view. So all these things are there in a single HTML file, and that should help you understand how a template really works. Right? Now let us invoke this thing and see what really happens. Right? So let me save all these files. Okay. And then let me come back here. So Python-Django has got Django 01, and inside that we have the first project. So let me collect all these things. Hopefully you saw everything. Yeah. So we have the first project, and the first project has got manage.py. So I'm going to invoke that first project, and Python manage py run server. Manage.py run server. So I know that it's not running in this context. So let me go back here. cd dot cd Django cd project and here I'll run start the server Python manage.py run server. So the server is started, so you know what to expect here, right? So let me get this and start it here. This. Now we don't want this. Yeah. Now I'm coming from first tab index.html. You can see this thing. Now, if you want to see the admin website for this, all that you have to do is some people had a question for what is the admin? Okay, so if I say admin here, it gives you the admin panel. What is this? Is it giving an error? So have I defined admin here? I may not have defined it. That's why. Okay, first project, first add. Admin site URLs. Okay, why is it not giving? Some sort of so these values are in conflict, so no problem. So basically it gives you an admin panel. Okay, I just share that with you at a later point of time. So if I just do this and you get this index.html. Now you know why it is both model view controller and template architectures. Model view template is the architecture for developing Django application. The principle with which Django works is model view controller. So please don't be confused with these jargons, So one is a principle and one is the mode of development. So both are true, and you need to understand when to use what. Okay, that's what it is. Now, so that comes to the end of the webinar, and I just wanted to show you how Django can be useful for developing web application. Let me also tell you one thing. Django is just not just useful for creating web applications that use a browser. You can also develop non-browser applications in Django, where we don't really bother about sending an HTML, but there are servers which only send data. They don't send you HTML or HTML templates or anything like that. It just sends a HTTP response and it sends you some data. They are called as REST applications. REST applications. What are REST applications? To understand them very simply, okay, this is a normal web application where it is browser-based, and if you're trying to invoke some URL, it connects to that URL and it is going to send you a HTML data, right, with related CSS and JavaScript for dynamic web pages and things like that. But let us say you have a desktop application. Okay, when you have a desktop application, HTML and CSS doesn't work. You just need data, and how it is supposed to be presented is taken care by your GUI application. Yes, and that's the reason sometimes Django has to return data not in the form of HTML but in the form of JSON files. So JSON or XML files. And what happens is when it returns the XML or JSON file, you are going to read that JSON file, extract data out of it, and you're going to render that information according to your GUI design, where the view is not just limited to Django. The view is also a part of your GUI application, right? So that's why view is kept separate. Views are kept separately. This is a multi-layered view. One part of the view is sitting on your your desktop application. The other part of the view is sitting on your Django application. So you need to think about that as well. So that kind of data transfer are called REST services, where HTML is not sent, but a JSON file is sent. What really we have to do is instead of saying render, you will return a JSON file. We'll say JSONify some data. That's all. So there are ways in which you can send data. Yeah. So instead of returning HTTP or HTML content, you return JSON data. So that brings to the closure of our webinar. And a couple of things before we go into our Q&A session. So I request you to actually pick up this link, all of you. And while people are asking for questions, I just need you to, I just need you to get into this particular link and fill up the feedback. Okay. So hopefully you must have got the link. Everybody must have got the link. This is a feedback link. Please leave your feedbacks. That will help us improve the webinars in future. No, the video link I'm going to share because it's still under recording. So I'll just have to save it as soon as I close this. What will happen is it is going to convert that into MP4, and I have to send that MP4 to the organizers, and they'll share it with you. Right? Or since it is WebEx, I can share a direct web link. So let me send you that. So please do fill up your feedback forms. That will be really helpful. And now I can get into some question answer sessions. You can either send your questions on the chat box, or probably if the question is really complicated, we can have a voice chat. I can start. So before we do that, let's say let's go back to things. Okay, how to set the environment? Well, let's say this was a question from Nilesh. So how to set the environment for Django? So let me show you that. Okay, so let's. So there are a couple of ways in which you can do this. Okay, so you can. What you can do is first, in order to work with the Python. So you have to install Python in the first place. So you need to have Python. So Python has to be downloaded and installed. If you're on Linux, it has to be it comes inbuilt, but you can always upgrade to the newer version that you have. The second one is you have to install Python-Django. Now, how to install Python-Django? Now, for all practical purposes, you need to go to this website, pypy.org. Here use say Django. Okay, Django 3.5, that's the latest version. So all that you have to do is just copy this and paste it here. Install Django. The moment you do that, Django will be installed. So right now Django is Django. I have already installed it, so you don't have to really worry about that. So I can still demonstrate that. So I think you have already seen how to install Python. Now you know how to install Django, because Django doesn't come pre-installed. Let me tell you that. And you should always say D with the capital letter. And if you want to install previous versions of Django, like 2 or something like that, pip install Django equal to 2.0.0 or any specific version that you want to have. That will install Django on your computer. So in order to test if Django is already installed on your computer, what you have to do is just invoke Python here. So, and then say import Django, like this, import Django. That should give you no errors here. So Django, and if you say Django dot underscore version, if you say this, it should give you the Django version. I'm currently using Django version 1.9. Okay, so that's how you can test it. But however, you can also do one more thing. Sometimes there is a situation where you have to work with multiple projects which uses multiple versions of Django. Right? In such cases, we can't use this because when you install Django on this, it straight away installs it on the computer, and it will be globally available. So the global version of Django in my computer is 1. But I want to have a container in which I just want to have a separate version of Django to be active, and I want to install Django with some version which is not the same version as the global Django. So in such cases, we can use certain containers like Vagrant or Python virtual environment and things like that. How to work with Python virtual environment is given in this website. You can just actually see that. Python virtual environment. So Python virtual environment can be used both in Linux and Windows environments. And Python virtual environment is, you can imagine like a container that contains specific dependencies for a given project. And you can have multiple virtual environments where different Django versions can be there, different versions of Python can be there, different dependent modules can be there, and none of them will interact or disturb each other. So you can actually do that. That's the basic environment that you will have to set it up. Rest of the things that will depend upon what kind of project you would be working on. Next question is how to install databases. So databases can be straight away installed without any problem. You can pick up any database of your choice. Let's say you want to use MySQL. So you go to the community edition, community things, wherever. So in the products, there will be community products. So go to community products, and why community product? Because it's free. Okay, so you can just install it, and once you install it, the Django gives you the the connector for MySQL. So like Django, you can just say Django connector for MySQL. If you just see that, you can specify that. So how to make MySQL backend? So you just have to specify that. That's all. See, MySQL connector Django. You just have to specify this. So now the active database will be MySQL. Similarly, there are other databases that you can connect as well. How to install multiple databases? Why would you need that? Multiple databases? I am not really sure. You can have one database, multiple tables, multiple databases, and things like that. But I'm not really sure. Does it mean how to use both SQLite 3 and MySQL? So if that would be a tricky thing, but it's not really recommended actually. Any free server to deploy in production? So we already have a WSGI that is good for doing some basic operations, and it is good for basic to intermediate level web applications. But however, you also have Apache free versions, free servers, Nginx free servers. It is either bundled with XAMPP or LAMP. You can actually use all of them. And that is one thing. So the next thing is how a template can be used in Hello HTTP response. So I have already shown that to you. And use the, okay, so different templates for AP and so on, and also use login and authentication part. Yeah, so login and authentication Django, and that is also very simple. All that you have to do is you have to create a login model with username and password, and that will also be stored in the database. And we use the login required login and logout functionality, okay, on the decorators for actually working with or working with Django login thing. So again, since it is a very short duration webinar, I won't be able to cover that, but of course it is definitely supported, and it is definitely covered in the complete course, as I mentioned earlier. Okay. What are the JavaScript modular function used in Django? So you can use any flavor of JavaScript in Django. You can use plain vanilla JavaScript, which is very popular, or you can use jQuery as well. And you can use AngularJS, Vue.js, React.js, more Meteor.js, Ember.js, Electron.js, all sorts of JS frameworks can be used here. And please remember, JavaScript is a front-end technology, not really useful for Django. That all depends on what kind of front-end that you want to describe. And if your HTML templates require, let's say, Angular kind of a flavor, you can use Angular JS library, and you can develop your entire HTML template using Angular JS with connections to certain variables. Okay. Otherwise, plain JavaScript will be fine. Can it be implemented on AWS? Yes, all sorts of cloud applications, Django can be deployed. Yes, you can put it on AWS, Google Cloud, any sort of web application, Azure, everything. Right? Video link, that is anyway fine. As a web developer, how much knowledge is required? So that's a very good question. Let's say if you want to create, if you want to become a web developer, so that is if that is what your goal is. Okay. First thing, I mean, especially, and he says like, especially with respect to Django. Okay, let me list down what you need. So you need to have Python at least intermediate level knowledge in Python. Okay, then you need to know the HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript a bit. So at least the basics of JavaScript and jQuery minimum. And since a lot of these web frameworks are very popular, you should minimum know Angular and React.js. Vue.js is also really good. So these three are very popular in the world today. Next thing is you need to understand internet technology, where how the client server works, what kind of protocols are being used there, and what is the purpose of HTTP, what kind of requests it has got, like the get, post, and a lot of requests like that. Basically, the entire internet technology, how internet works. So that is required. And finally, you need to know Django itself. So the different things in Django. So generally, Django is taught in 3 different levels. The first level, we start developing the basic Django application. In the second level, we start developing Django applications which has got a lot of complexities with JavaScript, and then different databases, different settings, and different authentication methods, different security measures, and a lot of things like that. In the third level, we start using REST APIs and things like that. So this is a full course, which full learning plan for any web developer using Django. Additionally, if you have some knowledge about AWS, and if you have some experience in deploying a good application in AWS platform and things like that, that will be definitely an added plus. Last but not the least, you need to have creative thinking. Okay, so without which nothing actually works. Right? You should be a very good logical thinker, creative thinker, because all of website success or web application success depends on its creativity. Right? So you need to know about that first. That's very important. And fantastic. So that's a really good question, Rohit Kumar. So he says, like in Python and Django, should we learn API and microservices? See, API is application peripheral interfaces. Each and every app has got an API. For example, let's say you want to develop a commercial web application. Okay. Now you want to accept payments from that website. So obviously you need to have the payments API, which either you get it from Paytm, or you could get it from anywhere, or a credit card or some bank, and things like that. So these APIs are available, their documentations are available, and you can readily use those APIs. That is what I'm talking. I'm talking about APIs that are commercially available. You can just pick it up and use it. There are APIs that you can develop also. You can create a library of APIs and which you can use. Then microservices. So the microservices definitely is an added plus. We can have Django microservices. Like we have in microservices are very popular in Java frameworks, but then there is no shortage of concepts of microservices in Django. Django microservices are also getting very popular. So microservices is the talk of the town today because everybody is adopting that because it is scalable and in terms of resource usage, it becomes very, very easy to manage microservices. So that's the great benefit of microservices. Yes, if you learn it, you're a different person altogether. So a person who knows just Django and a person who knows Django with AWS and microservices are totally different levels. So you are more respected in the industry. It's as simple as that. Then, what are the JavaScript topics in Django? So I have already answered that question. Any sort of JavaScript things will be there. Start with simple JavaScript, move on to jQuery, and then you can learn. So that would be sufficient to start with. Can we use WordPress templates in Django? You can use templates, but WordPress is a totally different approach to create websites, right? So Django is about web applications, whereas WordPress is web sites. So you could use the templates, not a problem, but not really WordPress. That's not really recommended. Okay, and host it for free publicly? No. See, Django is a software framework, okay, web framework. In order to host it, you must have some sort of server where you can keep your entire thing. See, right now, I have this Django application, which I told you on my PC, right? So you can actually, when I run this server, you can sit there, and if I give you my PC's or laptop's IP address, you can actually run the framework there, run your website there. So like that, what happens is software, but for hosting this particular Django and in this particular system, I'm going to charge something. So basically, you can't host it free anywhere. So you need to have some sort of a server space where this server application is going to sit, and they definitely will charge you for the domain name and also the server space. So that will be a very nominal cost nowadays, like 500-600 rupees you get it. And of course, there are places where you can host it for free publicly. You can also do that, but free is free. It won't be fully functional. That's always there. Difference between content and context. So context, okay. Context is, specifically in Django, context means a list of variables. It's a dictionary of variables. Content is the HTML content. So that's the content. So HTML, the entire file, whatever it has, is called as a content. The variable points, the variables that are there, for those variables, you are supposed to attach a value in the Python view, the views that you write. Okay, and those values for attachment is derived from some sort of a dictionary. That is what we call as a context. Okay, so whenever you are working with a HTML template, we pass a context which consists of a list of variables as key value pairs. So the keys are the variable names that are used in the templates, and whenever you're rendering it, instead of the keys, actually the values will be rendered. Okay, that's what happens. All right. So last question for me: what would you suggest to be professional, and how AWS and AWS and work on? Who do? Okay, so Pawan. Okay, so as I said, I gave you a list of things. So you start with Python basics, Python intermediate. Okay, I'm giving you a learning plan. So then right after that, you should be able to solve some good stuff in Python. Okay, you should be able to help yourself become a good problem solver using Python. And that's the reason why I picked up a Python thing initially. Then we are supposed to know about the basics of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, along with the jQuery. And you can also learn a few JavaScript frameworks, AngularJS, React.js, Vue.js, very popular in the industry. Plus, you need to know internet technology, and that is there as several YouTube videos. You can actually go through it or buy some books and get it, right? Internet technology, a lot of people miss that. That's not really good. Okay, you need to be really good in networking, because whenever you say cloud, whenever you say internet, it's all about networking. You know? Now, how can you miss out on networking concepts? You can't actually. That's why I say internet technology is very good. So I just brushed through this to get a flavor of it, so you know what you need to really work on it. So I told you Python, HTML, JavaScript, CSS, JavaScript, internet technology, Django itself you have to write, understand, and inside Django you need to know what is how to create your various things like models, databases, connecting databases, settings, configurations, admins, log, authentication. Various topics are there. You need to learn about all those topics. And if we want to see the kind of things that happens in Django, let me show you that. Okay. So this is the official Django documentation that I'm showing. So you need to be thorough with all these things. And in our courses, we actually deal with all these things actually. And okay. And then you should be knowing basics of cloud services, how to deploy a website and manage it. Okay? So that would mean that you should know the basics of AWS. You can just pick it up anywhere or get a course for it and things like that. And yeah, so microservices, again, as I said, is a talk of the town. A bit of that knowledge is also good. Right? Okay, what are microservices? When we launch a website, what happens is, initially in the previous past, we used to launch the entire website in one single server. Right? But what happens nowadays is like the entire website is functionally split into smaller parts or called as services, and each of these services are, are kept on different servers. Okay, some are see, for example, let's say Amazon. Okay, so what happens is like ordering a item in Amazon is basically a service, right? Now, sometimes what happens is like there are certain festive seasons where a lot of people would come in, so the load actually goes into peaks, into load peaks up. So what happens? What happens is this is one service which needs scaling now, so it needs more resources. So that's the transaction of making an order and buying it requires more resources. Hence, that service requires a lot of resources, and that is supposed to be scaled. If that Amazon web application is launched as a single service, then the entire website has to be scaled, which is not really required. It's only the buying and selling has to be scaled. So what they do is they split the entire web application into smaller parts, and they scale only those which needs a scale up or scale down, only those which require attention at that point of time. That helps to manage the website and also the resources in a much effective way. And these split the complete web application split into smaller parts is called web microservices. And buying is a microservice, selling is a microservice, placing an order is a microservice, and like that. So you have a lot of microservices. I suggest you to go through one of the YouTube link. There are a couple of very nice videos on YouTube. You should just take a look at that for better understanding. How to connect Django to API. So you can just call them from inside. There's nothing to connect. You have a library of APIs. You call them like a module import. So if you're working with Django, they give you Python APIs. If you're working with Django, the same APIs are available in the Java version. Okay, so like that. So just import them and start using it. Threads are used in Django, so that's a very good question. If you want, you can use it, but it depends on the context. But if you're because since Django is a server application, so it is meant for web backend. Obviously, multiple threading should be supported, and Django automatically does that. You don't have to really worry. So multiple connections it can accept, multiple connections it can handle, and things like that. And it all depends on where you host your Django application, whether that particular, let's say for example, Nginx server, how you configure that Nginx servers for accepting multiple connections and things like that. So that is what it is. But if you want to have a separate threaded mechanism, yes, you can still use it as a part of Django, and you can invoke multiple threads, make it work, and that can be a totally separate logic that can work alongside Django. There is no restrictions on that. Right? I think most of your questions are answered, and I think there are no more questions anymore here. Yeah. Thank you so much, and we will. I think. We will share this recording with you, and it was a wonderful. It was wonderful interacting with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Purushottam. This is Kalyan, and it was a really informative, and thanks for your time given to take care. To take every one of the participants through the basics of Python, and then about the Django, and answering some of their queries. I hope this short webinar was somewhat useful to most of them, and we shall come up with more such sessions in days to come. So we thank all the participants for having the patience and join to today's webinar, and we appreciate your time for joining, and do cascade to your friends and colleagues and people those who are interested to attend any of our future webinars, and we will be keeping you all posted with latest some of the more topics. So we wish you all a very safe stay, and take care of yourself, and good day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was definitely a pleasure for me to conduct this webinar and meeting all of you. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bye, sir. Good day, all of you.